Welcome back to UltraLife. Today, I am Josh Bellew.
I'm Adam Payne. We've been having a dynamic conversation with Keith Bishop, a clinical nutritionist, works at Flourish Pharmacy, has a website called Prevail Over Cancer. Incredible amounts of information. We've been discussing the metabolic effect about how what we eat really can have a strong impact on cancer, or what we're doing with cancer, and on so many other things in life, including brain health, whole body health, etc. Right. So anything else you want to add from our discussion last week, Josh?
Well, yeah, I do. I just want to finish up. So Keith was giving us what he calls the palm rule, and he talked about the amount of protein, basically, you say fitting in essence inside the palm. But here's the thing. I also want to try to make a distinction. Keith, there's a big war out there as it relates to one camp saying, you have to address cancer, and as you mentioned, cancer and Alzheimer's have very similar pathways that an individual goes down to get better. But a lot of people are going to say, you cannot have any type of meat. You cannot have this. You don't want to. You want to completely avoid dairy and all these things. But are you of the mindset that if you're getting organic, grass-fed chicken eggs, range-free chickens that are out there doing the normal thing, if you're getting grass-fed meats, is that okay, or is it beginning to be this prevailing thing of it just needs to go plant-based? Because I think if you say that, you'll lose about 80% of the people, especially in this area of the country.
Well, yes, we would lose them. It's kind of like, say, you don't talk about being a vegan or a ketogenic meat eater, religion, and COVID vaccines. You can't convince people to change.
It used to be taxes and religion. What's changed?
You can't convince people to change their mind.
Right. Right. Okay. So they have a worldview about things.
Exactly. And so I don't want to waste time with people and trying to convince them.
But do people get better if they are including healthy meats and even maybe limiting dairy and still utilizing good healthy organic fruits and vegetables and limiting grains, which we hadn't talked about yet?
Right.
Do you recommend certain grains as just almost a taboo when someone is dealing with Alzheimer or cancer?
I severely limit grains.
Okay.
And so for either one, just too many calories, easy to digest, raise your blood glucose, and that just starts feeding all the fat and inflammation, type things. So I do limit that. The proteins. The biggest issue, I believe, about proteins, meat, is how it's cooked. And whenever a meat is fried or grilled, blackened, or browned, there are heterocyclic amines, polycyclic amines, acrylamides that are produced that also are cancer-causing chemicals.
Interesting.
So it may not always be just the meat itself, but it's how it's cooked. That's not even going into the nitrite issue.
So do you have to bake? You basically only limited me to being able to bake or roast something, right?
I have a grill, and I watch the temperature. And so even with a grill oven, it needs to be under 350 degrees.
Oh, excellent. I'm so glad you're giving these little tidbits.
Above 350 degrees, anything, whether it be meat or bread or cake or French fries.
Or even grilling vegetables?
Vegetables.
Oh, wow.
Anything over 350 degrees and it's browning, that's a signal that we're starting to damage that product. And we don't necessarily want to eat damaged things. So anyway, that's one of my rules.
So one more time, what temperature do you get your meats to, and not over the
350 degrees Fahrenheit?
So if we do like a slow cook with smoking,
low and slow,
it's better.
Exactly.
Good to know. So Keith, what happens in the supplement arena? Because I do want to spend some time on Berberine as we go into our final segment here in about 6 minutes. But I really want to know from you, what are some prevailing supplements that seem to just come every single individual? They move the needle for them as it relates to these very difficult health challenges.
So when I see a client and I'm looking up their health issue, I'm looking to see, what food type things, if there's anything new, if there's anything new about supplements and lifestyle. And and there's kind of like a core group of things, and including we think about vitamin D.
Yes.
Everybody's taking that, so we got that one, taken care of. It, as it turns out,
You'd
it doesn't
be
really.
surprised.
it doesn't really prevent things like we thought maybe it would.
Really?
And it's a part of the picture.
It's a cofactor.
It's a cofactor.
Okay.
So it's not the whole picture, but also like genomically, I learned my vitamin D receptors don't work.
Oh, that's like our friend that does the genomic test.
Yeah, My Happy Genes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it doesn't work. And
So you have to use the cofactors to help.
to kind of help, yes, but then I just need to be more diligent about all these other things. So that's why my immune system isn't always great. Why I had COVID early, and why I'm not as big, tall, muscular, and big boned, because my vitamin D doesn't attach to those cells.
Okay,
They
so
don't operate quite right. Cancer cells that turn into cancer, things aren't going to be quite right. So I have to do these other things.
So keep filling us in on what are kind of your core supplements there. You mentioned vitamin D as a cofactor and a necessary thing for a lot of things, but
So berberine, is when I look at Alzheimer's and cancer and even bone density, berberine is a factor.
how
For
exciting.
bone density?
How exciting.
I mean,
See,
if-
Keith knows
What?
some interesting things
So
about berberine.
Whenever so if we think about the metabolic issue, even about bone density issues, so we have a bone cell, it has blood vessels that feed that.
Huh.
And if the blood vessels are getting plaque buildup and such and getting smaller or getting blocked, there are several reasons, not just blood glucose, but now it's getting smaller, so now this cell dies.
Makes perfect sense.
Oh, wow.
And so there are studies showing that berberine does help with bone density, mainly in animal studies, but now they're starting to see a few human things, show up with that. So it's kind of like, berberine is one of those, I don't like the term anti-aging type things.
Oh,
'cause
go for it.
We're aging.
You could say it.
Yeah, well, but I don't like, we're aging.
Right.
Let's say healthy aging. Okay. So there are doctors that call themselves anti-aging doctors, but
Yeah,
it's
the
actually
aging and
healthy.
regenerative medicine guys.
Healthy
yeah.
aging.
Slowing down the biological
Exactly,
clock.
yeah.
Can we say that?
And so berberine, is I always check that for every single health issue that I come across.
Wow.
And how often do you find that berberine is something that we always have this desert island talk, Keith, you and me and Adam, right? It's like if I was on a
Well,
desert
if I'm
island, there would
so if
be...
I'm going with Josh, I should then take.
So now I need another pallet of berberine. So I've got the I've got the curcumin, and now I need one of berberine. So
Okay.
yeah. So
you love it that much.
They're both, yes.
Okay,
And
okay.
now I probably could get by without taking berberine, but I take it.
Yeah,
And,
it has those
yeah.
antimicrobial properties
yeah.
to it. Has all of those blood glucose metabolism things. What else? Well, how does it affect the again? One more time, because I'm trying to make the connection in my head for bone density.
Okay. Well, and so actually they're trying to figure that out.
Okay.
Okay. So in my summary of reading the research, I believe part of it definitely has to do with vascular health.
So the
Okay.
vascular health, essentially how your bone gets fed.
Right.
Yes.
The bones make our blood cells. I mean, vast amounts of blood vessels. We don't think about that, but a lot of blood vessels in the bones. And if they're not getting nutrients, if the blood vessels aren't right, they're not getting nutrients, those bone cells are going to die.
Wow.
And so we're doing that along with nitric oxide and berberine to help open up the blood vessels. And it's not an instant type thing, but
Sure.
bone density problems are, it's the same. It's the
And
same thing for everything.
And Keith, you mentioned nitric oxide. With about a minute left, let people know how simple it is to test their nitric
Right.
oxide and some simple things they can do to elevate those
Yeah,
levels.
so saliva test. So it's saliva test, on a little test pad, and compare the color 10 seconds, and you know how you're doing. So I just had a client last night, and so her mother passed away recently, Alzheimer, so the two daughters are concerned. She did her 3x4 genomic test and doesn't have the APOE4 marker, which means that, she didn't get that from her mom, but you don't
Good.
have to have that to have dementia and Alzheimer's. And so, here, let's do this. And sure enough, she was low. She's depleted.
And what is because you can move the needle quickly on
Yes.
nitric oxide. How do you do
Right,
that, Keith?
and so it kind of goes back to those greens, the green vegetables, and cabbage and spinach and lettuce and celery and then
beet
beets,
tops, beets and beet
beet
tops,
greens,
yeah.
the greens and the beets themselves, and provide what are called dietary nitrates when they're in combination with the antioxidants of the vegetables. They're safe versus the meat issue. Okay, and so then that provides a basic chemical that nitrate. Our body uses it to make nitric oxide and improve circulation head to toe.
Okay, I'm going to take great advantage here and say the beat goes on here at UltraLife today. You've been listening to Keith Bishop, clinical nutritionist, retired pharmacist, decades in practice, and taken a really strong interest in Alzheimer's over the years and now cancer. Adam Payne, CEO of Ultra Botanica, has been sitting on the end. We've been having a great dialogue, and we're going to come back for this final fourth segment with Keith Bishop. And hang in there with us, UltraLife today. We'll be right back.
Our mission is to take nature's most beloved botanicals and enhance them with our liquid protein scaffold technology. This helps it reach your cells faster and better. With exponentially enhanced bioavailability, you'll feel better every day. Ultra Botanica, the feel-good curcumin.
Everyone, welcome back to UltraLife today for our fourth segment with Keith Bishop, clinical nutritionist, retired pharmacist, decades in helping individuals dial in on a better way, a better path to be able to have longevity, quality of life as they're aging, elegant aging, I might say, and he helps people do that. His blog or website is called Prevail Over Cancer. Prevail Over Cancer. Easy to remember. Reach out to him there. We, in our little break here, we got to talking about food again, and Keith mentioned something interesting. By the way, he's got a lot of followers on Facebook, on his blog, on Instagram, and he was saying that when he talks about food, people perk up and respond and really want to talk. He talks about supplements, it's like, and then when he goes into lifestyle, everybody disappears.
Almost.
So I know.
Unless they're exercising.
I'm exaggerating.
Unless they're already exercising.
Right, exactly. So, and by the way, I would love it. Let's go into the food again, but let's also talk about what percentage of exercise you think plays in this whole thing as well. Because I've heard people say, if you're going to totally avoid exercise, and then eat really well, some practitioners I've heard it say, you'll almost get as much benefit from doing the exercise as you will the diet. And that's controversial.
Yes. So
anyway,
exercise probably for Alzheimer's is probably the number one thing.
Wow.
And so,
really?
So
I
when we
love to hear
exercise,
that.
it's going to improve circulation head to toe. We've got to get blood supply to the brain.
Yes.
That's what's causing the problem in
Yes.
Alzheimer's. It's circulation to the brain. We've got to get those nutrients.
So the
eating.
micro circulation to the brain is a problem?
Exactly. Yes. That's one of the major issues.
And exercise is one way they can do that.
Get that.
They can do hyperbaric oxygen
Sure.
if that's available to them. That's another way,
Nitric-
right?
nitric
Nitric
oxide.
oxide, as you
So-
mentioned, the green leafy and the beets.
So capillaries in the brain feeding the central nervous system, are they damaged in Alzheimer's?
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah, the brain in the CT
shrinking.
scans is shrinking. It's atrophying. It's decaying. Like bone density, the bones are getting smaller and shriveling up. Those cells are dying because they're not getting blood supply.
Oh my gosh.
So we got to get blood supply. Cancer, it's the same thing with cancer.
So
we
the
got to improve that blood
plaque,
supply.
is the plaque playing a role in restricting
Yeah.
the capillaries?
I think so. So if you think about the plaque, we only have one heart, and which we do have technology. We can see that plaque build up. We know it's 50, 90%. Now we got to do that surgery, and because we can see that, but we can't see the microscopic capillary that only a red blood cell can get through. So if there's a little bit of plaque in that blood vessel, a capillary that red blood cell can't get through, now we have the tiniest little blood clot, and now all those cells and the rest of that capillary die out.
Wow.
Okay, so we've got to do everything we can to open that up. And exercise is extremely critical. And for that, nitric oxide is extremely critical. But one of the damaging factors is elevated blood glucose. Matter of fact, A1C is a measure of the damage to blood cells. Glycated hemoglobin. That's sugar-damaged blood cells. They're measuring that, and they have a machine that calculates that. But so that's damaging the cells. So it's crusty, cell, but that crust and stuff starts developing inside the blood vessels. The little tiny capillaries are going to be affected before anything else. So same thing with neuropathy in the feet, the hands, long way from our heart. That's when we start noticing the numbness and tingling.
It's because of blood supply.
The blood supply is dying out. Those nerve cells are dying out. The same thing happens up here.
Keith, if a person was going to begin to engage in an exercise program, and of course listeners and viewers are at all phases of life, phases of being overweight, unhealthy, some are progressing now on their journey, what's the simplest and easiest thing an individual can do in the exercise arena that anybody could engage in that's going to begin to move the needle, change their health, change the way they're feeling?
So first of all, a person does have to seek some, kind of like professional, counseling. Number one, is it okay to exercise? What are the limits? There's physical limits, back issues, knees, hips, and various different things, and even heart health. So they do have to check with the healthcare professional before they make those changes. But after that, it doesn't make, you have to get your heart rate up high enough. And I personally like high intensity interval training or HIIT.
But that would be a non-fat burning zone for someone like you, wouldn't it?
No.
You're able to get yourself right in the fat burning zone?
Oh, yes, easy.
Okay.
Matter of fact, it is a major fat burning issue. So actually, it's very simply put, basically it's about 1 minute of getting your heart rate up into at least to the fat burning zone, and then resting for 1 minute, and then exercising for 1 minute, back up into that higher heart rate, get it back down. We got to keep this heart rate in this fat burning zone. If we go too high of a heart rate, the body's going to burn sugar, which can be good, but not if we're trying to get the six-pack by 66 thing. So, and so it makes a big difference. So there's times definitely at the pharmacy, it's busy, I may not get to eat, or I don't have my time to exercise right before lunch. And when I don't do that on a regular basis, I don't lose weight. When I exercise in just like 20 minutes, and do a HIIT program, very simple, in my office, on the floor, a yoga mat on the floor, no weights, no anything else like that, it's amazing how much fat I can lose by doing that.
That's incredible, and something so easy that anyone can do anywhere. Want you to hear that, because you can engage and begin to change your health with little bitty things. To recap, we have not brought up fast food on purpose today, because that's like the holy grail of don't touch that. But avoiding processed foods, fast foods, avoiding sugars, limiting grain intake, especially adding healthy fruits and vegetables. The palm thing that Keith said is, that portion of protein that you're going to have that fits in the palm of your hand, and then a couple of carbohydrate portions that would be derived from fruits and vegetables.
I have some free reports on my website for that.
Yeah, and that's just it. Keith has so much great information. PrevailoverCancer.com, I assume?
Yes.
Okay, PrevailoverCancer.com.
And people, I think the important takeaway here is we don't have to do this alone. We can get clinical nutritionists like yourself on board to help us navigate these waterways in our life. Well, how are we going to actually accomplish that? But what are the results that people get, Keith? From how much does the needle shift in a period of time, and how transformative is it for people to go from status quo to something different?
Yeah, and to not let people down. We did start this conversation with Keith's wheelhouse, which is Alzheimer's and cancer. So you see an individual, Keith, that's really compromised with either of those health challenges, and they start to take your advice related to diet, exercise, and then, of course, coming alongside that with supplementation. What begins to happen, and how quick, like Adam said?
So in Alzheimer's, we can see if we can do the exercise and eating right and targeted supplements, we can see an improvement within 2 months.
Wow.
Impressive.
Okay, yeah, but it can't be done by themselves. They got to have the support. They have to have family support.
100% agree.
And matter of fact, I've seen cases where a family member quit supporting that person, and
They died.
They died.
Went the other direction.
And went the other
Gosh.
direction. And so it does take support. Somebody's got to help them to remember to do things. They can
Oh,
write
yes,
things
of
down,
course.
but they've got to have support. Somebody helping them to do that. Cancer is a little bit, more difficult to measure. Most of the people I see have already gotten into the medical system. So they're already in treatment. They're doing chemotherapy, radiation, surgeries, and so I'm supporting them after that. So
Right.
it's not as rewarding, as Alzheimer's. But I think it's very important to help with that survival rate, though.
Well, as always with Keith Bishop, we run out of time so very quickly. You can contact Keith. You can get an immense amount of information and even interact with other people. PrevailOverCancer.com. Keith Bishop, clinical nutritionist, friend of ours, friend of Ultra Botanica, doing this for decades, learning more all the time. I love the fact that this guy continues to learn more and more and more. He never just sits back and says, we're just going to do it this way. He's constantly learning, and that's so important. PrevailOverCancer.com. This has been UltraLife Today. I'm Josh Bellew.
I'm Adam Payne, and thanks for joining us.